Hello, everybody, and welcome to another talk. Today I'm going to be speaking with Ellen Tart-Jensen. I'm sure now Ellen will need probably no introduction for those of us or those people that have already got an interest in iridology. However, we'll just go through the motions. I usually just introduce and then I explain a little bit how I know these people, how we met. So we've got kind of a little bit of an interesting story. I was in Colorado in 2003 at a Rayid seminar, and Ellen was attending and doing a little. I think you were even speaking as well. I can't really. My memory is kind of like a little bit vague now. It's 20 years ago. So, but I remember we kind of spoke during one of the breaks. Always had a little bit of a chat, and you kind of got into one of your psychic moments. I think you just tuned in and you said, one day you're going to write a really good book on iridology. So, well, I don't know if I wrote a really good book, but I wrote a on iridology on the behavioral model. And Ellen also then, I contacted her after I wrote it and said, hey, do you remember me? And do you remember you said this about the book? And she very kindly wrote me a nice foreword for the book as well, which is fantastic. So eternally grateful for that. So I guess the best thing to do is for those on the unlikely event that some people who are listening to this don't know who you are. I think if you could just maybe introduce, what you're doing, your background, how you got interested in this fascinating subject, and just sort of take us through, and we'll kind of just see where the conversation takes us. I'm sure you've got lots of topics to talk about and introduce. So over to you, Ellen, if you want to sort of just give us a little bit about your background.
Well, thank you, Andrew. It's such a pleasure to see you again after all these years. And it was my pleasure to write the foreword for your beautiful book. And I highly recommend that book. It's really excellent. And you've just taken the viewing of the eyes to another level on all different levels, spiritually, mentally, emotionally, and physically. So it's an excellent book. And it's wonderful to be here with you. I have gotten into iris analysis on all levels because it's a non-invasive form of analysis. And I had a pretty intense spinal surgery as a child. I had scoliosis, and I grew up to be a teacher in schools, and I taught children with learning disabilities and gifted children. Then I had an accident, and the rod that was in my spine broke, and they had to remove it. And that sent me, being in a body cast for a year, a brace for a year, being in the bed for many months of my life, sent me into some deep places of reflecting and thinking and what I really wanted to do with my life. I loved teaching, but on Halloween and Christmas, children were bouncing off the walls from sugar. And I really wanted to make a difference and help people. So I went back and studied nutrition, naturopathy, iridology, and I mostly went where there was knowledge. I studied iridology with a Cherokee Indian herbalist named Luana in Ohio. I studied herbalism with her. I studied herbs with Jacob Miller, an Amish herbalist. And I went to Bastyr Naturopathic University in Seattle, and I studied there some. And I met Bill Caradonna there. And I studied iridology intently. I came to California in 1985 and took a class with Bernard Jensen on nutrition and iridology. And then I went to Switzerland and studied at the Presura Clinic. Dr. Ernst Bauer was there, and I did like a deep study with him on nutrition, and I did iridology there. And he had actually healed himself of liver cancer with nutrition. He was a medical doctor and a homeopath. And so I was there for 2 years. And then I came to the Hidden Valley Health Ranch to take more classes with Bernard Jensen. And at that point, I was looking around as to what I was going to do next. And Bernard Jensen said to me, "You don't want to go back to that cold country, do you, darling? Why don't you stay here and work for me?" And at that time, I had a long braid down my back. I was very swift. And he really thought I was swift for a while. And so I thought, well, I would like to learn more about iridology and natural healing. So I stayed there and I worked for Bernard for many, many years. I ghost wrote some of his books. I assisted him with iris analysis. And back then it was different because I took lots and lots of eye pictures with a film camera. And those pictures had to be developed. And it took a good week to get them back.
Yeah.
Or we could analyze them. Then I would load them in a carousel and project them on a rear view screen. And I would sit and analyze eyes all day. And then Bernard would go over them and we would send the report to the patient. And Bernard was a person that wanted to get a lot done quickly. So he didn't like waiting to get those pictures back. He wanted to see them instantly. So John Miles was working with Bernard at the time doing research on computerized iris evaluation. And also, he had a talent for building cameras. So Bernard worked with John to create a video camera to Bernard's stipulation, and John worked on it, and it was a very historical day that we had a class, probably 150 people there at the Hidden Valley Health Ranch, and John took the eye pictures of a man who was Ignaz von Pexley's great nephew.
Oh, wow. Amazing.
His name was August von Pexley, if I remember correctly.
How did he found you then? It just
Bernard was in contact somehow with him.
Right.
And I think it was great nephew or great great nephew. I'm not positive. But I have the picture of him with John taking his eye picture, and it was projected up on the television screen for the first time ever.
Wow.
Immediately, we could see the eye picture, and the whole class stood with a standing ovation. And that was a historical moment.
That's like a double, isn't it? Because you got like von Pexley's like the first, or allegedly the first era, and then you've got this video moment where again it's like a first.
Yes, it was amazing. And this gentleman was probably in his late 70s, sort of whitish hair, very nice man. I got to talk to him quite a bit. It was just fascinating to me.
Was he interested in iridology as well? Was it?
Yes.
He still continued that sort of line, that lineage, yeah.
Yes, I don't know how much he did exactly. I just know he was friends with Bernard and came to the ranch. And so after that class, Bernard looked at me and he said, "Now, darling, this camera, this video camera is for you to use. I will never use it." Because he was not technologically gifted, he thought, although he was an excellent photographer with film cameras. And he was a perfectionist. So when he taught me iris photography, it had to be perfect. And those brown eyes, and he wanted 4 pictures of each eye. And I would photograph all the eyes of a class, and there'd be over 100 people every time.
Wow, that's a lot of pictures.
And then we had to keep up with who they were, because if you don't, it's like switching a baby. When it's born, you've got the wrong eyes with the wrong person. So I'd come back with all this film, and, it would need to be processed. And a week later, I would lay the slides out on, it was like a light projection table. And I would have to look at them with a magnifier and pick out the very best of the 8 pictures. Because Bernard would go over them, and if they weren't perfect, they weren't usable.
So how many on average did you get that were good? I mean, did you find that there was always one good one, or did you find pretty much all of them you took were pretty good?
I got pretty good at it.
No.
I mean, I had to be there working with him.
I mean, when you look at the books, I mean, for those that don't really, obviously Dr. Jensen's book, very famous, kind of very inspirational. It's the first books that most iridologists will come across or gravitate towards. I mean, particularly that volume 2. I mean, I must ask you about that actually, just because I have an interest in graphics and have a printing background. It always struck me as an absolute nightmare book to actually produce that. I mean, there's so much work got into that.
It took years.
A lot of color, there's slides in there, there's overlays, there's tracings, all kinds of stuff. A complete nightmare book to reproduce, I'd imagine.
Those color prints in that book were about $400,000 at the time.
Wow.
I think he sold a piece of land to pay for it. That was his passion, and that was birthing something that was so important to him to get out to the world.
I mean, you say that he was a bit of a technophobe or whatever, but actually the book comes over being highly technical. You get that sense. He's even talking about computers, and there's all that sort of like mapping processes in the back. He was talking about the graphics to map all the sort of the contours of the eye and everything. I mean, so you get the sense, even though you're saying he's not very technical, it actually...
Oh, he was. It's just that when it came to the jump to working with computers,
right,
it was just a jump that he probably could have taken, but he just let me do it. But he was brilliant. He was brilliant with technology. He was brilliant with iris photography. He was brilliant with, tuning into people as to what they needed. When he'd look in their eyes with his magnifying glass, which was what he always preferred, the direct look with a magnifying glass. And I remember, and I was with him for many consultations, and really, I saw miracles occur at that ranch. I saw people with serious psoriasis to get well, serious kidney issues, tumors. And I assisted him in cleanses and photography. I mean, we worked just about 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And that was quite an amazing time on that ranch. We had grass walking, cold water walking up to your knees, colon cleansing, classes on nutrition. And he would meet with every person when they would first come and put them on a program. We had a remarkable garden where we had amazing vegetables and fruit trees. He would take us out for a tour of the fruit tree orchard, and he had a tree of just about every fruit. And he taught me very carefully, very clearly, how to know which vegetable, fruit, which food had an affinity to which part of the body. And so, you could look at a stalk of celery and see it look like a bone. And by the doctrine of signatures, if you study celery, the minerals of celery nourish the bone. And the fluid of celery nourishes the lymph that lines the bone. And I've literally had people with arthritis, with nodules on their fingers. When I tell them to make a juice with celery, cucumber, apple, and lemon, within a few months it goes away. Because when you taste your tears, they're a little bit salty. So celery juice is salty. And Bernard Jensen also liked goat milk and goat whey. We raised goats. And we had it with carrot juice. Because goat milk had that good sodium and minerals for the bones. So he taught me the different organs, glands, and tissues of the body. And if we saw a deficiency in the iris for that area, then you feed that area with those foods.
Hmm.
So it just was an amazing time with a master, truly.
How much of the work, I was going to say, how much do you think he was kind of working a bit psychically? He could just tune into people, and
A
how much
lot.
of it was a systematic. So he was actually doing that quite a lot, just doing a
Yes,
general overview of the eye, but somehow picking up something deeper.
absolutely.
Mm.
I mean, it was remarkable. The man was remarkable.
So what do you think are the best techniques that he taught you? What did you come away with that you really feel that were a great grounding for you? Is there any kind of, so a patient comes in, never seen him before. Did he have any sort of like super quick tips that you could kind of, a way to approach a person and get a lot of information very quickly, or something like that?
Well, he always talked about the strength he saw in the eye, as well as the areas of genetic deficiency. And those areas he would tune into, and then he would start talking about the foods they needed for those areas and the nutrients they needed for those areas. And he was really big on the colon and the digestive tract. If you read his book, Tissue Cleansing Through Bowel Management, sold millions. And I was with him when we did a lot of those cleanses and took a lot of those pictures of old pennies that came out that they didn't know they swallowed, or
It's like
popcorn.
our washing machines, isn't it? When you
Yes,
try to clean them out, find out.
popcorn they ate years ago. And I think the combination of cleansing and nutrient building is the key to health. And that's what I saw really make the difference, was getting rid of the toxins and rebuilding the cells that had been deficient. And many times you can help a person that has had generations of lung issues to support their lungs. And Bernard Jensen would make sure they got turnips and turnip juice and radishes, garlic, onions, things that clean mucus, mullein tea from the lungs. So cleaning and supporting the lungs. It's just a very much of a science and an art to look at the eyes as a whole. So when I first started studying the eyes, I studied each section and what the areas were. But then they started opening up like a baseball field, a universe, so that you don't look at just one sign anymore. You look at the whole person, body, mind, and spirit. And then when I met Denny, which wasn't much long after that, Denny Johnson taught me all about the personality and the emotions that go with the physical. I mean, it's all one unit. We work together as a whole.
And what was, I know there was a little, I remember Bill Caradonna was saying about when you kind of brought those two together initially, there was a bit of friction because obviously Dr. Jensen wasn't really kind of seeing the eye or interpreting the eye in that way. So there was a bit of conflict there. But do you think in subsequent years, I think the two have really come together now? I think a lot of people that are what I call the physical model and the emotional model, they've become more or less one now. And I think a lot of people like yourself, obviously you're teaching Rayid now as well. So, you're just by combining these things regularly, I think new students are just getting they get a good feel for that, don't they? Because there's a lot of information around. It's not like when we were I say me, probably I started in 95, 96, something like that. But there wasn't really much around in that sphere. It was more the physical model. There was you had Rayid, but it wasn't really talked about, or it was almost like it was a separate thing. It was only later it seemed to come together.
So Bernard, we would get together on the weekend, and he would talk to me about the emotional aspect, the personality aspect. And he was a very spiritual man. But I have journals. I have a whole museum of his things. And I have journals from some of the very first naturopathic conventions with articles from Benedict Lust. And way back then, Bernard was speaking at these conventions. And he had a lot of peer pressure about iridology. Does it really work? Is it useful? And so he would say to me, he wanted it to be scientifically accepted in the world. So he would say, I can talk to you about these things, darling, but I can't bring them out in the world yet. The world is not ready for these things, because he really wanted iridology to be accepted scientifically. Even by the medical profession. And he had a lot of criticism back then. He had a lot of courage to stand up for iridology in our country when everybody was against him. Even some of the naturopaths were skeptical. And so he worked really hard to prove what he wholeheartedly believed in from a physical model. So yes, he probably had some differences with Denny Johnson, but he just wasn't ready to embrace that at that time. But when I was working with Bernard, I had also studied with Bill Cardona and Harry Wolff, and I had been a member of NIRA even when I was in Switzerland way back in the 80s. And so I called Bill one day and I said, I feel like we need to bridge the gap between the European iridology and the Jensen iridology. Bill and Harry were doing amazing journals and research on the European iridology, which Harry was, he was from German descent, and he was able to read a lot of the iridology in German and translate it. But I had studied German in Switzerland and was able to read a lot of it in German there.
Oh, wow.
So I really admired what they were doing. So I approached Harry and Bill and I said, what can I do to help us pull this all together and bring the best out and elevate iridology, to another level? So we ended up forming a board of directors, Harry, Bill, and myself. And then we brought in Paulette Suzanne, and then Leonard Melmauer and Dave Carpenter. We started, it was like a little snowball, sort of got rolling, working with the policies and the procedures, the syllabus, everything. It was hours and hours and hours of work to put it together with the best of iridology. And I got a lot of hate mail because they said it was blasphemous against Bernard's work, and but I wanted to teach the truth, whatever that was, the highest truth about iridology. And so Harry was president, Bill was president, and then Bill wanted to be full-time at Bastyr University to become a naturopath. So I became president. And I ended up being president for maybe 8 years. It was a volunteer job. And it was hours and hours and hours to bring this information out to the public. And I was teaching all over the world, gathering students. And at first it was NIRA, the National Iridology Research Association. And then we wanted to be international. and I had to file all this with the officials. So that all took time. So I changed it to IRA. But then I was told that, that would never go over in England because of the Irish Republican Army. So we got together at a board meeting, and we worked on and created the term IIPA, International Iridology Practitioners Association, which it is today. And our dream was, because when Bernard passed away in 2001, I was actually heading up a board meeting in Las Vegas. But our dream was, and my dream was, that when Bernard passed away, who was going to carry it on? Who was going to continue to teach it? We had journals. I wrote in a lot of those journals. It was International Iridologist journals. But there wasn't really a vehicle in place to continue to teach iridologists long after we were gone. So that was very important to me because I loved iridology. I loved that it was a non-invasive form of analysis without needles, knives, and drugs, that I had been through so much. And that I really wanted it to be available to help people get well or prevent illness and help them with their emotions and their personalities, which Rayid did beautifully. So we worked really, really hard to put that in place. And it was my dream to bring Rayid into IIPA. So I continued to invite Denny to speak at our conferences. And when Bernard passed away, we had a huge conference in honor of him. I taught a 5-day seminar, and then I led a 3-day symposium conference. And I think we had 16 speakers from all over the world.
Wow.
And Denny was one, and Dr. Fragnet of France, and Dr. Daniele Larito of Italy. And they were using color therapy in the eyes to affect healing on those organs. It was called iridotherapy. So I was working to bring body, mind, and spirit together through the eyes. And Denny's work really laid out a beautiful plan for that. And so eventually, IIPA started inviting Denny to speak at conferences, to speak on webinars. And slowly, people loved it. And then in 2008, we had a conference in honor of Bernard's 100th birthday, what would have been his 100th birthday celebration. And I must say, I need to really include my husband, Art Jensen, because he and I met at the ranch. He was actually the manager of 60 employees, and he helped Bernard get done what he got done. And he continued to help me get done because he was a businessman, but he really believed in this work. And he worked on managing the classes, managing the business, helping to carry on the work so that orders went out all over the world. And so he was there for me always. And he did so much to bring iridology forward in this world. But in 2008, we had that conference, and so many people from around the world wanted to speak at that conference. It was hard to decide who we would have. So we decided that it would need to be people that had studied with Bernard, so that we wouldn't leave people out and hurt their feelings. because there were many great teachers out there. So again, we invited Denny Johnson. So many people came to the ranch and took Bernard's classes, you know, and so we had Harry Wolf speak, we had Bill Cardona speak. All of us, we're really a family. Whether we've agreed throughout the years or not, we're all connected through these amazing eyes.
So you said that there was a little bit of conflict when you first put that idea forward to bring the two organizations together. What were the real stumbling blocks for people who didn't like the idea of kind of mixing the Jensonian with a sort of European model? What were the things that really caused them the most trouble?
Well, a lot of people that did the Jensen model were used to diagnosing in a way. And IIPA is more about analysis and asking questions. Because Joseph Dick, and I wrote Through the Eyes of the Masters, A History of Iridology. And Bernard left me a lot of his library. And I went back through all of those old books, some of the old books of Deck and Teal and Felk, all of those old books. And I discovered that in the beginning, Ignaz von Pexley, who was given the credit of the first map of iridology in Budapest, Hungary, died a very sad man because he believed you could diagnose through the eyes. And he couldn't understand why maybe 80% of the time when he diagnosed an area it was correct, and the other 20% of the time they didn't have a problem there. He couldn't understand why. And now we know that the iris is a map of genetic signs that tell us about the family history, physically, mentally, and emotionally. And many times they don't come to an iridologist till there is a problem that has started happening in that area. But Joseph Dick started doing tons of research, being very meticulous German naturopath and iridologist. And Dick, Ungerer, and Bernard knew each other. I have pictures of them together. I have tapes with Bernard talking with Joseph Dick and Joseph Ungerer. They knew each other. But Bernard had his way from the books he studied, Lilliquist and Henry Edward Lawn, who changed his name to Lane when he came here. He firmly believed in his way by that time. And Dick was going on with research, much of it during the war. Dick worked in prisons in the war. He was captured. He and Ungerer both were in the wars in the prisons in Russia. They ended up walking home. Ungerer nearly died. But that was back when they didn't have x-rays. And they helped people by looking through the eyes. But eventually Dick, after photographing thousands of eyes before and after illness, and they still had that same pattern, he determined that they were genetic signs. And so many iridologists wanted to diagnose. That's what they had learned. And they would then give an herb for that problem. But CNN went undercover to many of those iridologists, and they had someone they sent that they had done a complete medical scan on, who turned out perfect blood work, perfect everything, and they sent them to 3 or 4 iridologists who diagnosed this, and this, and gave them a whole bag of herbs.
Right.
And that was making iridology look bad. There was even an iridologist that went on, I think it was Good Morning America or some big show, and showed the eyes of a person with what we call lacuna and pigment, and then showing another eye and saying, but this is how it should look. When I get through with him, he's going to look like this.
Right.
Well, once I learned the truth, I could not teach the old way. And there was another iridologist that told a lady, oh my goodness, you'll never be able to have children. If you do, you'll die. I mean, things that were really grossly incorrect. And I would take eye pictures at conferences. And I had one elderly lady, when she saw her eye pictures, she broke out sobbing because she said, I have worked for years. And that lymphatic rosary, she called it, is still there. That lacuna is still there. I mean, I am someone that did a 21-day water fast when I was in Europe. And my rosary is still there. So it's there to tell me if I eat a lot of gluey foods, a lot of sugar or pasteurized cow dairy or a lot of gluten, I get congested again. So it's really been a journey, and I got letters saying, you're wrong. We're going to continue doing iridology the way we always have, and that kind of thing. And I'd say, well, don't you want to know what this sign means? Like ferrum chromatose. Don't you want to know that it's an imbalance in the liver? They didn't want to know. They were just sort of stuck in their way and weren't ready to change. So the saying, when the student's ready, the master appears, really came to mind, that I would teach the truth as highly as I knew it. And I told my students, look, if you can prove this wrong, I want to be the first to know. We had a research department in IIPA. And Dr. Peter Gould, Bill Caradonna, we went to Howard Medical University. We researched pancreatic signs to show the genetic pattern from a family history of diabetes. But they're and Bernard used to say, the eyes are a master science in genetics. So it's just been a matter of continuing to tell the truth. And I'm so proud to say we have IIPA today. And when I stepped down as president, and it went on to Dr. Dave Carpenter, people were going, is IIPA going to die? What's going to happen? I said, no, this is my plan, that it will go on and on. So now we have an executive director in Patty Lower doing a fabulous job. We have a board of directors. We have a certifications and standard committee where we really review the accuracy of what's being taught. And we have a wonderful board of directors now. And I'm still an advisor to the organization and certification and standards. But I'm just so proud to say we have this organization that Harry Wolf, Bill, and I began, and it's going on and on.
Can I ask you also, just obviously there's the Jensen, the Jensen map is very iconic, and I know that I think it was probably about 10 years ago when you did a sort of a facelift or a revision, and you changed a few things and sort of, you had your own input on that. But where was the actual inspiration coming from that? Did he ever say, well, how did he go about doing it? Who actually drew it? Was he kind of graphically inclined? Did he draw his first version and then have it reproduced technically? Or was it just something he had an idea, he was using other maps maybe and thinking, I kind of like aspects of those maps and I'll create my own? what was the sort of genesis of that map? Is it because it's obviously the most iconic map in the world? It's the one you see the most. Everybody likes and uses it a lot.
Yeah. Well, when you look at his volume 2 book, and you look at my iridology book, Techniques in Iris Analysis, Bernard preserved and collected iris maps from all over the world. And he studied those intently. And then he saw 300,000 patients in his life because he had a health ranch where thousands of people came and he saw each one. From all that, pulling those maps together and from his own study, he created his chart, his iris map. And his favorite color was blue because it brought him peace. He wore blue wherever he went. It was important to him because he was a triple Aries, on fire all the time. And so that map was, according to what he had studied, as accurate as he knew. And then I'm a color girl. I love all the colors. And I decided to upgrade the map based on the work of Gunther Jurassic and John Andrews and many that were finding signs in the pancreas at 10 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 4 o'clock, and 8 o'clock. I upgraded those. Tony Miller in Australia, she added her own research. And then in Joseph Ungerer's map, and I really respect Joseph Ungerer, he had the liver areas in 3 areas, not just one area. So I tested those things out for several years, and I added those areas. Plus, I added color so my students could quickly see the stomach area in green, the bowels in tan, the blood in dark pink, the muscles in light pink, the lymph in light blue, the bones in dark, and then the outer area of the skin in dark blue. The bones in gray, the lymph in light blue, and the skin in dark blue. So it's color coded. And then I put the organs and glands in purple and the heart areas in red. And it was a matter of, I guess, love, because I just wanted it to be as upgraded as what was known in the world at that time, and to add color.
Yes, terrific. I mean, it's a great. It's a very inspirational map. I mean, it was it was obviously the one that I wouldn't say it's the first one I was introduced to, but it's the one that I kind of used a lot when I was learning, and I always liked it because of just something about it, the sort of the look of it. I love those triangles around doing the clock face stuff and the balance of it. It's just it's very artistic. I mean, got a sort of a graphic eye anyway, so I like the artistic quality of it. But when I was putting the book together, I did a little section at the back called the gallery section, just for fun, because I like to draw things on the computer. I just had to go at reproducing some of those old iris maps. So if they were in, like, on Pexley's, even if it was in German, I just get it translated into English. So I did Niels Lildquist map, and I did the von Pexley one, and just to show the sort of genesis of those maps. It's really interesting looking at those old maps, particularly the Lildquist ones. His book is amazing. He was doing everything by hand. Hundreds of sort of iris drawings, all beautifully illustrated by hand. It's just very interesting to see how those guys put those maps together, particularly those like Kritzer's map. I really like something about that kind of green quality, and it's very Germanic. It's sort of very, very sort of balanced and nice looking. But I found it was just a good study to actually sit down and look at those maps, even though you're not going to use them, but look at the differences and see how they were interpreting, particularly around that brain area. How some of those areas that they would interpret were quite interesting. But as you say, I mean, probably the Jensen one is the one that most of us knew or grew up with, or kind of like.
We cut our teeth on that map.
Yeah.
and then built on it as we grew and learned. But Emil Biwo is one of my students in Sweden, and he really succeeded. He went very far in his studies. He did his PhD on iridology through the University of Natural Medicine, and I was his dissertation director. And he did a map study.
Oh,
and
right.
He pulled together many maps from all over the world and overlaid them to show the things that were the same and the things that were different. But his map study is very fascinating.
Oh, I see.
But when I teach my students or my clients about where iridology came from, I will say that hundreds of years ago, doctors were looking in their patients' eyes, and after seeing hundreds of people with heart trouble, and they all had a sign at 3 o'clock in the left iris, they drew a map of it.
Mm.
And the kidneys, and that's how it started being built.
Mm.
And now we have Daniele Larito, we had Fragnet in France, who were shining color lights into areas like the kidneys and the thyroid, affecting change in those organs. So we are amazingly made, and we have 28,000 nerve endings in each eye that go to all parts of the body, and over 1 million nerves from the pupil border through the optic nerve, down the spine, out to the whole part of the body. So it's quite amazing, and there's still a mystery there. There's still so much left to learn.
Definitely. Could you say a little bit more about what you say Dr. Jensen was quite interested? He had some thoughts behind personality in the iris. Could you elaborate on that? Do you know kind of just a few things that he maybe said in passing? Was he kind of associating various colors with different kind of emotional states, or was it more the positions? Or
I think it was the feel of the whole eye. It wasn't anything specific, but many times he would just say, that's a very sensitive person, when it would be a person with very tight fibers, or a person with contraction first. He'd say, now that person's an active person. He knew a lot, but as far as ever getting it written about or talked about, he wouldn't ever say that. I mean, teach it. I think it was his path. He just had a path to bring iridology to the best of his knowledge out to the world, but also nutrition and cleansing. He was an absolute master. And what he taught then stands true today in nutrition and cleansing.
When you said when you were initially studying, how did you actually come across iridology? Was it being taught as part of your course, or was it something that you just picked up on that other people, you're being influenced by others around you? You were saying you were doing nutrition and you were doing naturopathy, but was that actually being taught as part of the diagnostics of the course, or is that how did you find iridology exactly?
I was a voracious reader, and I would order books from all over the place to sell and to read. I ended up having a radio show and teaching about nutrition. I taught at the community college nutrition, and I ordered Bernard Jensen's books. I ordered every one he ever wrote. He was like the god of natural health in my mind at the time. And that was the early 80s. And Hannah Kroger, the early herbalist, one of the best women's herbalists, and Don Christopher, they both practiced iridology, and I studied their work. And then I decided to travel to Bastyr in Washington, because they were all naturopaths, and that's where I met Bill Cardona. And then Switzerland, and they were doing iridology there. And then I wrote Bernard a letter, and he invited me to a class. I had no idea he'd write me back. And he invited me to a class and gave me a partial scholarship. And I was trying to decide if I was actually going to stay in Switzerland at that time, or leave and come back to this country. And because I taught English to pay my way, I loved it over there. I was studying with Dr. Bauer. But about that time, my landlord needed my flat for his business. And all of my students ended up buying my juicer, my blender, my rebounder. Everything unfolded for me to come back to the United States and stay here. And I left on my birthday in the full moon. And I came back, I came to the United States. I had no idea what I'd do after I studied with Bernard. It was a 12-day class. I even slept in the tent to study with him.
That's
because
dedication.
I didn't really have enough money for a hotel at the time. And then he said, you don't want to go back to that cold country. I mean, there were over 150 people there, and he invited me to stay there and work.
He just knew you'd be the perfect person to do it, something he just sort of tuned into.
Well, I was also a good photographer because he loved photographs, and I was photographing pictures of the class, and I took them to him, and he just, I don't know, we just had a connection. And I believe that Bernard and I had a connection for a long time because I had read all his books, and for me, he was just, you know, the epitome of natural health at the time. We truly connect with each other through the eyes. I truly do believe it's a connection to the soul and our feelings through the eyes. And iridology has taken me places I would have never dreamed of. I mean, teaching in the Philippines and Taiwan and Sri Lanka and Sweden, you know, all over the world, Brazil, Costa Rica. I went down there 3 times a year for many years. I taught at the Hippocrates Health Institute in Florida 3 times a year for 10 years. I have so loved it. And somehow, if I look at my life, I didn't plan any of it. It just all unfolded. And that I would meet Art, and we would really be in love and get married and work together. And we really were a team for 30 years to bring this information out to the world. And sometimes I felt like, because he had been with Bernard all his life, he had sat with him with very sick patients. He had sat with sick patients by himself there at the ranch. And sometimes, you know, I would discuss some of my clients with him, and he would just pull something out of the air like he was channeling Bernard, but he would just know through osmosis all that he had learned. I mean, he was raised on health retreat, and even Altadena was Bernard's first health retreat, and his children were there, and they got goat's milk.
Did he study as well then? Was he practicing and studying as well? Or was it kind of more he was in the background sort of facilitating the mechanism, if you like, rather than actually front?
Well, he got it through osmosis because he was there for all the classes, and everything Bernard said with him growing up and everything he, you know, just the way he was fed. He said that he, going to school when he was little, he got Sprout sandwiches, you know, to go to school, and he would trade his Sprout sandwich for a peanut butter and jelly sandwich.
Wow.
And you know, he and his brother would sort of hide candy sometimes, but he, in his heart, he really believed in the natural path, the natural nutrition, and he lived it. He really ate healthfully. But he was an accountant. I mean, he was a numbers guy. He knew a lot about numbers, and he was very good with marketing and management and that kind of thing. And that's what he went to school for.
Well, they're all important skills. You need all of it to make something work. So, you know.
Well, we were a team. I mean, you know, he did that side and I did the other side, and it just was pretty amazing.
I mean, I really enjoyed your Eyes of the Masters. That was really great for me to give me a background, but that's probably more, that's more for those who have an historical interest in this. I just wanted to see how the evolution of iridology had come about. But just talk a little bit about some of the books and the courses that you're doing.
Thank you. I wrote Health is Your Birthright, which is for everyone. And you can look up every ailment and what to do for it naturally. You will learn every organ of the body and what it does and what nutrients support it. You can learn poultices, salves, baths, every herb, what it does for the body. In Health is Your Birthright, how to create the health you deserve. And then Simplified Guide to Iridology is for those that want to just learn a little bit of iridology. And then my textbook that's being used all over the world, Techniques in Iris Analysis, is for the more serious student. It's being used in colleges and universities. And if you'd like to find me, you can go to ellenjensen.com, which is my website.
Mm-hmm. And I saw you had there's a supplement site up as well.
Yeah, the one I like the most is called Sun Food, because it's nutrient supported by the sun and the earth. It's organic, and it has all the nutrients Bernard used to have me take separately in one capsule.
Okay.
So it has chlorella and barley grass and alfalfa and beetroot for the liver. It has dulse for the thyroid, and lemon and orange and rose hips for the vitamin C. It's kind of a well-rounded nutrition for the day, especially for people that don't eat fruits and vegetables.
Okay.
So I like my Sun Food quite a lot.
And how about sort of courses and stuff? I saw that you're teaching a class with Chris, aren't you? That's coming up. You're doing a Rayid seminar, or like a mix. It's a physical and emotional together. You're kind of doing a joint thing.
Yes, I'm going to Italy in March, the end of March, and I'm going to be teaching with Dr. Daniele Laurito, and and Christos Miliankos. We're all three going to put on a little webinar for IIPA from Italy. And then I'm going to Greece, to Athens, and Christos and I are teaching a 5-day IIPA certification course.
Okay.
And next week, I'm starting a 4-part class on Tuesday night for Rayid. And so I just honor Denny Johnson so much for all that he's brought forth. And then for your work in behavioral iridology, we still all have so much to learn.
Never stop.
That we can go deeper and deeper. And it's absolutely true when we work on healing our emotional heart, our physical heart gets stronger. It's just to look in the eyes and understand all those layers and levels. It's just amazing.
So the courses, I know you're doing that one coming up, but will they be available as, could you, if you couldn't make it at that time, can you still get them as a download, or can you still get access to those through your website?
My Rayid course, you will be able to. And IIPA has something called iFlix, like Netflix, only iFlix.
Yeah,
and you can join and you can watch all the webinars I've ever done, Tony Miller's ever done, Christos has ever done, many of our great teachers. So that webinar will be from Italy through IIPA, but if you didn't get to catch it, it will be there. And then IIPA is having a 3-day symposium, which will be in a couple of weeks, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So iridology, ASSN.org is IIPA. and you can sign up for that 3-day symposium, or go to ellenjensen.com for my Rayid class and learning about Italy and Greece. And my Facebook page is Ellen Jensen. Mm-hmm. And also Bernard Jensen International. I have 2 Facebook pages.
Okay, I'll get all those put up as we're talking. They'll magically appear underneath our pictures, so we'll do all that. Well, that's absolutely amazing. So thank you again for taking the time to do this. I know you're super busy, so it was really great that you could take time out to do it. I know we got there in the end. We had a couple of kerfuffles along the way, but we got there and we connected. So thanks again for coming on and speaking, and I'll get this uploaded as soon as I can. So yeah, just thank you for all your work, Ellen, and really nice to speak to you.
Thank you, Andrew, and thank you for all the good work you're bringing out in the world.
Thank you very much.
Okay.